Hello, I'm Challen and I'm the Edgy Skater. Today I wanted to kind of kick off a whole new series, a beginner series, for someone who wants to become an adult skater for the first time. So I am presuming that you are starting from scratch. Maybe you've gone to a couple of public sessions before, but that's about it. However, you have made the important and wonderful conclusion that you want to begin your figure skating journey. And the first step to being able to do that is getting figure skating equipment, your own first pair of skates. So this is actually a really, really exciting thing. And I love getting new skates. I actually get excited when I hear other people are getting new skates. I treat it like when other people like announce engagements or like babies or something. That's how excited I get for when people are getting new boots and blades. Now, in the very beginning, your boots, the shoe part of the skate, and the blades will come together. And technically, that is a skate. When boot and blades are together, that is now a skate. As you progress, or if your support requirements require the boot and blade to come separately, as they will as the equipment gets a little bit higher, uh, that is totally normal. In fact, the skaters you see on TV, they are all buying their boots and blades separately, and they're mix and matching between different brands and manufacturers so they can get exactly what they like. That doesn't make it a custom skate. These can still be stock options. However, when you first get your pair of skates, they may already come together in like a nice little bundle for one solid price plus tax. And the person who's going to help you figure all this out, you don't have to do it yourself. In fact, I don't even recommend you try to do it yourself, is going to be your handy dandy, hopefully local skate fitter or skate technician. So, who is this person? This is someone who basically has a deal with the different manufacturers. They send them their boots and their blades, and this person will help take into various things about the skater, their level, current skating abilities, their goals, their current height, weight to an extent, the degree of ankle mobility they have. That's a really huge one. And to an extent, their style of skating. Is this someone who really, really bends into the skate, against the skate, tries to force the ankle to bend as much as possible, which is a good thing? Or is this someone who is still skating pretty high up in their leg? Meaning there's not a lot of knee bend, there's certainly not a lot of ankle bend going on. If there is knee bend, the bum's sticking out opposed to staying right in line with the shoulders and the ankles. Those kinds of things are going to determine what kind of level of support you need, which is going to determine which kind of boot model you'll need, regardless of the brand. And like I said, in the beginning, in the lowest levels, boots and blades will already come together pre-selected. You just need to figure out what company you want to go with and what size. Now, a tricky thing with this is all of these options will come in child or adult sizes, but just because it's an adult size doesn't mean it has adult stiffness or support. It's still going to have the same amount of support as the little child size version. This is why a lot of adult skaters, when they end up getting skates, it doesn't necessarily follow from the bottom up linear progression of stiffness and support that we typically think of when we think of younger skaters working their way up through the model ranks. So I've seen adult skaters who, brand new to the sport, are just learning how to stand up and fall down safely, potentially be put in boots designed for double or triple jumps. That would be insane to do that to a child. In fact, you could really, really hurt your child's feet and ultimately a skeletal structure if you did that to them. But depending on the adult, that might make sense. It might not need to be that extreme, but it's an example of how with adults it gets very nuanced. I don't exactly want to say tricky, but it gets very nuanced. There's more variables to take under consideration, and your skate tech or fitter is going to be the person that's going to be able to best determine what those variables are and what it all means. So, I guess the first thing I should start with is, where do we find this magical fitter person? So, when your rink has figure skates, I almost want to put it in quotations. In a sense, they are not actually by design figure skates, but they look like a figure skate design. Construction wise, it's not really a proper figure skate, but it's modeled after the aesthetic. If you go to a place like some sort of sporting goods equipment place that sells hockey skates, those people might be knowledgeable, potentially very knowledgeable to fit hockey skates. They don't have the ability to properly fit you for figure skates. I'm sorry, and I'm just going to throw it out there. They do not. And chances are, majority of those skates that they are going to carry are still not actually yet true figure skates, but skates that are just modeled again in the aesthetic of a figure skate that may or may not be better than whatever version your local rink has for the public skate. So this is going to be, for a lot of people, their first confrontation in the figure skating world, where there is some sort of extra steps they have to do to get what they really need. So the reason why you don't want to go with the skate options in like those sort of big box sporting goods stores, it's not going to have the support you want, especially as an adult. It's probably not going to be very good grade material, so it could break on you. And breaking, when the equipment breaks on your foot, um, the foot can also break, or any number of things in your body can break. Um, in adults, it just tends to be worse. Uh, so it's they're not necessarily very safe options, and even though it may on the surface seem affordable, it's not necessarily actually affordable when we look at the notable risks we're taking and what it would cost if any of those risks, sometimes fairly probable risk, were to occur. So, put a little pin in the price point discussion for a moment and we'll get back to it later in this video. So, who can help you fit figure skates, actual figure skates? You can do a couple of things to find this person. You can try to contact a local figure skating club or a figure skating club in the next town or city over if yours does not have one. And you can try to ask that club or coaches in the club where they recommend you getting that equipment. You can also try to Google figure skate fitter near me. And depending where you live, it may not exactly be near you. Near you could be anything from a few minutes to 5 or 6 hours away, in some cases, potentially more. And I do have a solution for you if that's your situation. My trusted skate fitter is about depending how I go, what traffic is like, hour and a half ish away from me. And because there is a lot of traveling often involved in figure skating, I have been trained to consider that a short distance that is nearby in figure skating world. For the people that live in that city, it's like a 10-15 minute drive away. So yes, local is sort of in quotation marks, is loosely local, but it's worth the drive. So let's say you've found whoever you want to go to see. Usually it's appointment first. Sometimes maybe you can catch them lucky where there's nothing planned and they can do a walk-in appointment, but typically skate shops don't do walk-in appointments because they're often too busy for them in the first place. But you would go on their website, call up their number, make an appointment, and then when you go for that first appointment, what they'll do is they'll have a bunch of, in the shoe store they have those different foot measure devices. Each figure skating brand has their own version of those. So hopefully, fingers crossed, your skate fitter carries more than just two brands, and likely you'll try multiple of these different fitting devices. And again, based on goals, age, experience, your body, and your budget, you'll figure out what kind of equipment you need. Now, like I said, if you are in authentic figure skate territory, but the boot and blade still come together and you can just, get a nice little bundle right there, that's great. You don't have to worry about trying to fit a boot and blade. Now, something that a skate fitter should do is even if they come together, they can still move the blade around. So after you're measured, we determine this is a good size. We don't need to do anything special to it. If you need to get any inserts or anything like that, that's going to be discussed. But the next thing they're going to want to focus on is, and this happens if you buy the blade separately too, is make sure that the placement of the blade is over your center of balance in each skate. So we'll make sure each foot kind of gets their own custom blade placement, which might be right down the middle for some people, or it might be slightly not, I don't want to say crooked, but it might be slanted in one angle, either at the top or the bottom, for a particular foot, or maybe even both feet. It depends on where your center of balance is. And there's a variety of things that inform that, and it might change the more advanced you get and the more stable on your skates you get. That would be the next step. If your boot and blade are going to come separate to begin with, there's a lot of really, really good beginner blades. They're going to be slightly higher quality than blades that automatically come with the boot. The boot and the blade, when they're separate, are always going to be at least a slightly higher quality than when they're together, which is going to be reflected in the price point. But you can't really go wrong with selecting blades, and in my opinion, you don't really need to jump around in blade levels like you might need to jump around in boot levels. So the two major front-running blade manufacturers in figure skating is John Wilson and MK, aka Mitchell & King blades. Both are manufactured out of Sheffield, England, and it's a Sheffield steel, which is really, really high quality steel. Now, other blade manufacturers, because these are the originals, they'll have either a blade that is their equivalent of like a knockoff or imitation of the shape of those blades. Some companies do a better job at this. Some companies, one company in particular, which I'm just gonna say because I've used MK blades and I love them. I in the very beginning started with John Wilson and ended with John Wilson blades, and I like those well enough. My favorite blade brand right now is one called Paramount. It's made out of different steel, a much more water resistant, much harder kind of steel, so it lasts longer. They're a little bit cheaper than MK and John Wilson, even though they are more expensive to make. and they're lighter weight. That's not going to matter when you're a beginner and intermediate level skaters. You get more advanced, it'll matter. But cool thing about those is they mimic the design of the other blades, but for a much more fraction of the cost. And you can customize them with pretty colors, which you can't really do with the other blades. So if you are budget conscious and this is your first pair of boots and blades where they come separate, if your fitter carries Paramount, I actually really recommend you go to Paramount. And if they don't, I'd personally recommend staying with either MK or John Wilson blades. I've got my own little reasons why I'm actually quite a staunch supporter of that. But that's personal, that's not what this is about. So, once you picked your boot for your price point, your blade for your price point, you got each blade fitted properly over that boot, the fitter will then drill it in a more permanent way, and they'll sharpen the blades for you because the blades probably seem pretty sharp to you, but they're actually not sharpened yet. And at this point, you can get away with and even ask. Your fitter will probably default to it, but you can make sure and ask for just a standard figure skate sharpening. There is competitive sharpening. It's more expensive, and it's not going to be necessary for you at this point. Even if you just start competing in the lower levels, I wouldn't even call it necessary at that point, unless you want to spend the extra, $3 to $6 for it. But not really necessary. When you get all that together, and again, if you need any sort of special insoles, if you need anything to make it a more snug fit, because we want the skates to fit snug. It shouldn't feel like a shoe, and you shouldn't even be wearing socks in them. What you'll wear is either a quote-unquote figure skating sock, which is a thick kind of tight that's cut off like a sock, or you'll wear tights. Or if you're sort of a bad person about it, you'll skate barefoot like I did for my whole career, very much to my fitter's dismay. Now, if you so wanted, you could get antibacterial sprays to help protect the inside more. It's really recommended if you're going to skate barefoot that you spray your feet before you put them in, and wipe down, let the inside air out after you're done skating. Probably respray your feet just to keep bacteria in control. But you're not going to wear your normal socks, not even thin normal socks. It's going to be skating socks, or it's going to be tights. If you don't mind glares and frowns. You could go barefoot, but a lot of people find it very uncomfortable, and your feet are going to get a lot colder. Even though it's just like a thin little tight. You think your feet are freezing until you go barefoot, then you learn what freezing is. So you'll get all those goodies. You'll probably pick up soakers, something to protect the blades when you're not wearing the skates. You'll probably pick up some kind of a cloth to wipe the blades down, something microfiber or terry cloth, or I actually think that something like lamb skin or cow hide works best. But if you want to go vegan, that's what other cloth options are for. That is sort of the total. And your skate fitter shop will likely carry socks and tights and things like that. So I recommend that you pick up at least 2 pair. And that is kind of going to be your first major commitment purchase. Now, depending on, and this is presuming this is all stock, you didn't get a boot separate from blade that required any amount of semi-customization. Sometimes if you have bunions or if you've had hardware installed in your foot and we need to be aware of screws or if there's nerve issues somewhere or even if just, one foot is a little bit bigger somewheres or a little bit narrower in some area. There's semi-custom adjustments we can do on a stock boot. Worst case scenario, if the fitter does not have a stock boot in any brand that fits your foot, but there is a brand you like, and there is a model in that brand you like out of everything else you've tried on, other options is they can call the company, they can take extra measurements, and they can have a semi-custom or a fully custom boot designed for you. This usually has a 6+ week wait to put in the order, have it created, and then sent back. Sometimes it can take a few months. Part of that depends on what part of the skating world season that you order in. But these are options for people that maybe have two different size feet that are more than half a size difference, or people who have unusually shaped feet, or maybe very large feet. There's no matter what foot situation you have, there are options for you. It just might have to be more in a semi-custom or full custom route. But once all that's said and done, you have your total. Now, some skate shops will let you pay in increments, and then when it's fully paid off, you can take, your skates home with you. But typically, for non-custom work, for what I'm going to say a lot of adults can reasonably expect to pay, just the boots and blades themselves, not talking about the soakers or skate guards is another thing. Skate guards is what you wear when you do have the skates on. You are at the rink, but you're not on the ice yet. You don't want the blade coming in contact with other surfaces because it'll just wear it down faster. So now talking about guards, any cloths, any soakers, or a skate bag, just the skates themselves. Expect to pay somewheres in the 400-ish to 700-ish dollar range. This is going to vary a lot depending again on the boot manufacturer and the model of boot. Semi-custom skates have usually somewhere between an extra $150, gonna cap it at $250 charge. Jackson is a skate company that's actually very expensive to go the semi-custom route. Other companies like Rydell, you could get a full custom skate for I think $195. So this can really vary between brands depending what country they come from and anything going on with importing, things like that. And a full custom skate, which they won't even do below certain levels anyways, but full custom skates are probably going to be somewheres between, I think the cheapest I've heard was $700-ish, give or take a little bit, and they can cost all the way up to, I think the most expensive I've ever heard was $2,500 with the blades included. Not that the boot and blade came together, but after the blades were bought and the boot, the total was that. I don't think I ever knew what they just paid for the boot part of the skates alone. So it can get up there, but the majority of adults I think are going to be paying somewhere between 400 give or take up to maybe 700 give or take. And again, this can be worked out with your fitter sometimes in 1 to 3 installments. So it is a big upfront purchase, but if you take care of your equipment, it really will take care of you. This is going to be safer than anything you're going to get at like a big sporting goods box store. It's going to last you longer anyways. There'll be a certain, I don't want to say too much about warranties just yet because that could really vary between company, but they will be waterproofed. That's not going to happen in a big box store. Most of these are not vegan materials, although vegan skates are becoming a thing slowly. But any of the oiling, the leather treatment, anything like that, that's going to be taken care of. A boot in this price range, depending on how often you skate, how hard of a skater, aka how much you really have ankle function, you can get anywhere between maybe 2 seasons on the very low end to maybe up to 5 seasons or more, depending again on how hard you skate, and the blade can last, depending how often you need to sharpen it, about that amount of time. For someone with a lot of ice time, someone who practices a lot and practices year round on top of it a lot. The general idea is that, I don't know if you can hear all the sirens out there. A blade will typically get sharpened, depending on the skater's preference, every 30 to 40 hours on the ice. And boots, when I skated about 5 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, year round, I've been able to stretch proper high-end boots to about 4.5 years. And if after you take them off, you dry them really good so that the water doesn't condense in the rest of the blades, because all the blades except for Paramount, they're really hydrophobic. They don't like water and they will rust immediately within 24 to 72 hours, depending where you live, if you don't wipe all the moisture off. So what I recommend is you get off the ice, you wipe them down, you pack them away. You get home, you unpack them, you wipe them down again, you take the insoles out, you let the boot completely dry, exposed to air, and then before your next practice, you reassemble the boot, insole everything back in, blade should be fine, cover them up, put them in your bag, go to the next practice, rinse and repeat forever. Rydell on their company says that if you take care of your skates like that, they can last up to 8 years. So a lot of it is about how well you take care of these things, because they are your first serious committed investment to the sport, is proper equipment. Now, if you cannot find the fitter near you, your next best option, hands down next best option, is to call the different boot manufacturers. Talk to a technician on their end to help determine what might be the best size and model for you. They can take your measurements over the phone. They'll walk you very detailed through how to take those measurements. It will likely require a second person to do it because your weight will shift on the paper if you're trying to necessarily take your own, unless you have incredible flexibility. But they can help determine if their boot is a good fit for you. If you're new and you're trying to sell you heavy customization, thank them for their time. Try a different manufacturer. Try to find the manufacturer that's going to require the least amount of diverting from stock options away from you. You want to find a stock boot that is most like your natural foot, and each boot brand has a specific natural foot shape in mind that they're primarily basing their stuff around. So Rydell is a great brand for very narrow feet. If you have very wide feet, Rizport is great. If you're something in the middle but maybe still leaning towards the slightly wider side, Jackson is good. So it's things like that. And you can put in an order directly with the manufacturer. Because you technically cut out the middleman of a skate fitter, it should be cheaper for you to go through the company this way. Should be. So that is an option you can do if you do not have a skate fitter around. If you end up still needing boots and blades separately, you can either start calling the blade manufacturers and going through the same process. Once you have the boot first, because the boot size is going to determine the blade size. So boot, then blade. You can order it that way and then maybe take a long trip to a good fitter who can attach the boot to the blade properly for you. Or you can go to a fitter, take a long drive once you have your boots shipped to you, and then you can buy the blades through them and they can attach it. And most likely when it comes to blades, whatever you want and whatever size they'll have in the shop. Boots, not always so much. Beginners are pretty good. As you get higher up, they may not have it in the shop, but the blades, they typically always do. So that's what you can do if there's no one immediately around you. And then another option, I'm almost hesitant to say this even though I have done this in the past, but I did this from a certain level of experience doing this. Because a lot of people get into skating and they don't stay, sometimes you can find secondhand on eBay, on Facebook's marketplace, through a local skating club. Sometimes you can find extremely gently used equipment. Something that my son or daughter tried this for 1 to 6 months, or they used it maybe only a couple times and they didn't like it, never touched it again. Sometimes you can get massive bargains, but to get bargains, you have to do two things. You have to know what size you need, and those skates would have to live up to whatever condition you were told they were in. They have to actually be in that condition. And you don't want skates older than a year old, and you don't want blades older than a year old. And you're still going to need someone who can sharpen those blades, and that person ought to be your skate fitter in the first place. The local rink might offer sharpening services. They do not know how to sharpen figure skates. Hockey player people might know of a fitter that a hockey fitter or skate sharpener, or a big box store might have a maybe skate sharpener person attached to them. I'm telling you, they are not going to know how to do the figure skates. Worst case scenario, I know of people who send their skates out of town through the mail to get sharpened and have sent back to them. So these things can get tricky to navigate, but there is always a solution regardless of what the situation is. And on top of bargain hunting, which again you ideally do from a place of experience, I was able to get a pair of skates that had been used for about a season, weren't broken in yet, and those skates retailed about pushing $600. I was able to buy them for $80, just because the person wanted to try something different. They weren't quite happy with the purchase they got, and they knew how expensive things could be and wanted to make it easier for somebody. And even though the boot was it was a half size bigger than what a competition fit would be, which is a little bit different than what we've been discussing anyways. Usually about half size difference. I was willing to take that for the price point, and because I already had a couple tools at my disposal I could do to kind of fill in that half size a little bit better. But that's not something a beginner is necessarily going to know how to do. So I hope this is helpful. I'm going to follow this up with a way to vet your skate fitter. So I hope you found this helpful. Feel free to pass it along to anyone that you think could benefit from it. And again, no matter what your situation is, trust and believe that there is always a solution and that you will find it. And other people will be happy to help you find it. The manufacturers I've spoken to, they're very generous. It's not just about making a sale for the vast majority of them. They really want to make sure the skater is happy and can afford moving forward with the choices that they're making. So I hope this finds you well and have a good skate.